I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Nursing. For our first year, we had a placement at a rest home where we were allowed to interact with patients and nurses alike to help us learn new skills. Among all of our duties, we each had a patient that we were to care for throughout the duration of our stay. My patient was called Mr. X. I changed his name for privacy reasons. Rest homes can be creepy enough, even at the best of times. This particular place I was situated at was an old villa that had been a hospice during the late 1930s, but was renovated in the early 90s and a rest home wing was added to the original structure. The laundry room was the worst place to be alone. In the far end of the original villa, the laundry was cold, dark, and always secluded. When asked to venture in there, I would always run in and run back out. Whenever I took Mr. X to the laundry to gather his belongings, he would say in an eerily casual voice, "Look, there's Steve, and he's here to see you today. He told me he loves when you visit him in here. It gets awfully lonely in the boiler room," and he would stare at the corner near the door that led to the old boiler room. It's just the storage space now. I could never tell whether Mr. X was joking or not, but I would laugh anyway, not wanting to seem afraid. Mr. X always joked around with me. He wouldn't let any of the other nurses look after him if I was on duty because he always had so much to tell me about his week. He would tell me that I was his favorite nurse, and he was easily my favorite patient. One Tuesday I was doing my first night shift. I was very excited as patients in the day are much different than at night. It was one of those nights where the dark seems to press in on every corner, almost like a blanket. I felt a little uneasy as I was doing rounds on my own in the original building. When I walked past the laundry room, I seemed to get the feeling I was being watched. Thinking of Mr. X, I chuckled to myself, trying to think of Steve as a joke. I finished my round and headed back to the nurse's station. When the charge nurse asked how my rounds had been, I told her about how I always feel uneasy when I go near the laundry. She laughed and told me not to be silly. She said, "As a nurse, you'll get used to creepy places. Our main concern is the living, not the dead." She and the other nurses laughed for a bit, then she looked at me again. "Since you love the laundry so much, there are some sheets that needed to be cleaned for tomorrow. You can run them down." I thought she was joking. Unfortunately, she wasn't. As a new nurse, you get picked on a bit. It's all fun and games, and you eventually learn to live with it. I decided to just get my trip to the laundry over and done with, so I decided to grab the sheets and went on my way. It was so dark in the old building. It wasn't a cold night, but the breeze snuck through the small gaps in the old panels, creating a chill. I pushed open the door with my foot and reached my hand through the door to turn on the light before I went in, not wanting to enter in the dark. I felt a small breeze on my hand. I figured it was just coming from the paneling and heard a small creak, which I again put down to the breeze against the old building. I walked into the room and, out of habit, looked toward the boiler room. To my surprise, the door was slightly ajar. Knowing that doors in a restroom should always be closed, I walked over it to close it. That was when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. A light move behind the door. As much as I didn't want to look, I peeked through the gap and saw a man sitting on a bucket with a wild grin on his face. I slammed the door shut and fled out of the room, leaving the sheets on the floor. As I sped around the corner, I ran into a very welcoming face. Mr. X smiled at me, startled, and asked what was wrong. When I was done explaining what I saw, he laughed and walked towards the laundry. I reluctantly followed. Mr. X walked up to the boiler room door and opened it. It was empty. "Nothing can hurt you, dear," he said. "You are well protected, I can tell." He winked at me. I smiled awkwardly and told him it must have been my eyes playing a trick on me. He laughed again and turned to me. It was at that point when I realized that Mr. X wasn't allowed to be walking around at night alone. I offered to walk him back to his room. He walked towards me, stopping first to pick up the sheets I had dropped. "What kind of wife will you be if you leave your sheets all over the floor?" he teased. I automatically chilled out and laughed. He knew how to make me laugh, Mr. X did. I walked Mr. X back to his room and got him settled before bidding him goodnight and telling him I would see him on Thursday. The last thing I saw as I closed his door was him smiling at me lovingly and then turned his head as though to talk to someone. Thursday morning, I showed up at placement ready to start my workday. At handover, the nurse didn't mention whether or not Mr. X was due for a shower, so I wanted to ask her. She looked at me with such surprise. Mr. X passed away on Tuesday morning. I'm sure you must have been told when you had your night shift. Didn't you think it was weird he didn't come to see you? She then smiled sadly at me and walked off. I didn't think it was weird he hadn't come to see me, because he had. I had 3 more weeks left at that particular placement. For those remaining weeks, I was no longer afraid of the laundry room. In fact, I felt a calm, warm feeling whenever I walked past. I'm sorry my story was so long. I hope it entertained you or gave you chills. It is 100% true, whether or not you believe it. My cousins have been dealing with freaky things happening from the very beginning. They first live in an old farmhouse where mildly scary things happen semi-regularly. Lights flickering, footsteps, all the bit. At this point it was just my aunt, uncle, and their oldest child who was just a toddler. They then built a brand new house in a quiet part of town, and that's when things actually got worse. By the time their oldest daughter was a young teen, they had 3 more children who were all experiencing now terrifying things. Doors were slamming shut. They could hear whispering almost every night all around the house, and the oldest daughter was seeing a large man with bird-like feet and huge wings. She saw him on a couple of occasions just briefly, but described him as completely black without a face or any features, standing at the foot of her bed in the middle of the night before it disappeared. This family is very close with God. They attend church every Sunday and have a strong faith. But the family soon discovered this oldest daughter had been experimenting with Ouija boards and other dark things, and they packed up the family and moved to Central America for a year as sort of a fresh start, in hopes that they could return one with all this left in the past. While they were in Central America, however, things hit their peak. The sound of furniture scraping along the floors. My cousin described it like someone was pushing a bed from one end of the bedroom to the other over and over in the upstairs bedroom above her. Happened often, and they had horrible smells in their home like rotting meat. A couple of times in the middle of the night, they heard some very, very loud whispering. She said it was loud enough to hear clearly but sounded breathy and hushed. Outside their window, speaking a strange language. Their dad speaks Spanish, and although this was in a Spanish town, her father confirmed that the voices were not speaking Spanish or anything similar, and there was no one outside when he investigated. One daughter also had a door slam in her face. She was terrified and began screaming and attempted to run to her sister's bedroom for help, but as she was doing so, simultaneously every single door in the house slammed shut. They didn't lock, so she was able to simply open them, but it was obviously quite terrifying. They had a pastor come to their home and bless it, although they said nothing changed. After a few months of living there, the youngest daughter in the family developed a severe illness and had to be promptly flown back to Canada for treatment. After I arrived back in Canada, strange things continued happening, but not quite as violent or often, just strange things off and on. Their motion-detected garbage lid lifts by itself and lights appear in the middle of the night. That was just about 10 years ago, and now things are starting to get very, very bad again. The youngest child of the family, the only son, went to university, and in the meantime, nothing even remotely strange happened in the home. He just returned from school about 2 weeks ago, and it seems like it has come back with him. He says he saw the dark bird-like man in his room at night and again on the stairs in the same week. He also says it speaks to him and tells him to do terrible things. He has never been involved in any dark practices and has had a very close relationship with God, so we don't know why it would attach itself to him or if that's even what is going on. I'm very close with my family and have witnessed a lot of these things firsthand when staying at their home, but I have no clue how to help or where to start. These experiences are absolutely terrifying for the whole family, and after 25 years of this happening, we really want answers. Why this? Why would it be doing this? I don't know, but I still want to figure this out somehow. If anybody has any advice or wants to come forward and think with certain theories and whatnot, it would help, and I would be so grateful. Thank you so much for reading. Hey guys, Phantom of Darkness here, and once again, thank you so much for being a part of the Phantom crew. Just want to let you guys know what's going on. I actually did a recent collaboration. Actually, it was uploaded yesterday with Joey's Nightmares, and I'm a part of that effort, obviously. So if you want to go ahead and check it out, it's a little different. It's something that I'm not really used to. It's a Let's Not Meet Stalker story. I don't normally do that kind of stuff, and you probably won't see that on this page, but if you want to go ahead and, check that out, that'd be amazing. Joey's Nightmares is a great page and channel. If you haven't subscribed to him, you might as well, because he's an awesome guy, and YouTuber in general as a whole. So go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and for this video as well, like, comment, subscribe, share, and let me know what you think about this particular video in general. I mean, like the creepy nurse, experience, and of course the one that you just heard. Anyway, I'm signing out. Thanks for reading, and well, not reading, but listening. Anyway, see you guys.